Are you looking for affordable land? Today I'm going to show you a couple of affordable properties that also come with owner financing, and then we'll dive into how you can make money using wind leases and wind farms. So here's what we're going to cover today. I'll go over some property updates, what's coming up. Then I'll do our deal of the day, and then the big topic, how to make money with land using wind farms. And I'll break that down into 10 clear questions with a case study. And finally, a quick fact of the day, just for fun, and a free gift for live stream viewers. But to start, for anyone who is new, my name is Erica. I have a company, Gokche Capital, and I buy and sell vacant land. You can find my website at gokchecapital.com, and all of our properties are listed under Buy Land. So you can see this map. We do have properties throughout the U.S., and just as a brief update, we should be getting some properties in South Carolina. Those should be listed in the upcoming days, so keep an eye out for those. But in the meantime, we do have properties in North Carolina, New York, Florida, New Mexico, Colorado, and Oregon. And for our deal of the day, I noticed that yesterday there were a couple people asking about Florida land, so I wanted to highlight our Pasco County property. Let's zoom in on the map here. Pasco County is just to the north of Tampa, and this is just under half an acre. We do have a little informational video on the property, so if you wanted to go to the property website and watch that, it does have information on the property. But we can zoom out and see that this is a rural property, but very close to Tampa and development. It's actually closest to Newport Richey, and there are a number of outdoor recreational amenities in the nearby vicinity. So this is called Moon Lake. It's still fairly rural, so you get privacy. You see it's fairly green still, but there are a number of homes here, so it's not the middle of nowhere. People are able to build in this area. And we do have some nice drone footage. There's actually a home built next door. So yes, people are building in this area. It is not an untested location. And just a quick note on the zoning. It is agricultural residential, which is a... Hi, Ninkeith. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but thank you for joining. So agricultural residential, this is a great zoning designation because most agricultural zoning designations are pretty light in terms of restrictions. And there's no HOA, of course. So it should be, lightly restricted. Although I would say I don't believe RVs are allowed. Yeah, RVs are not allowed for full-time living. So just keep that in mind. All right. And we do offer owner financing on this property. The cash discount price is $29,997 plus the doc fee, but we do offer owner financing, and we will tailor those financing terms to match what is affordable to you. So just let us know what down payment and monthly payment you can afford, and we will work out terms that match your budget. I do also want to highlight, we have a new, you can see it in this thumbnail here, we have a new promotion that comes with owner financing that we're excited about, and it's win 5% cash back. So if you pay off the loan early, in 6 months to be exact, you will get 5% of your cash back. And that is, hi Abby, and that is 5% of the cash price. It's going to be minus any fees, but you do get a chance to get some of your money back if you make the effort to pay off the loan early. We're really excited about that promotion. And there is also still our 365-day exchange guarantee, which we added a little bit ago. Still relatively new. We're also excited about that one. But basically, in the first year, you have the opportunity to exchange the property once. This way, you have security knowing that if for whatever reason you decide that this property isn't actually the right fit for you, or we get a new property that is suddenly, you look at and you say, oh, wow, that's actually my perfect property, you can exchange once in the first year of the loan term. And my partner, Avi, wants to call out that we were just talking this morning, so this is brand new, hot off the press, but we will be, for any older viewers, we're going to be bringing back our free land giveaway promotion. We'll be working on the details of the new promotion today and tomorrow, so it should come back, and we should be formally introducing it in the next couple days. So keep an eye out for that. We're really excited about it. I know lots of people loved that promotion back when we had it. So we're bringing it back. Stay tuned on that one. But yeah, that's our Pasco County property. We do have a few other properties in Florida. And like I said, we have a lot of properties in North Carolina, which is a popular state, I know, and New Mexico and Colorado. All right. Okay, so let's move on to the big topic for today. And that is wind farms. And this is increasingly, I actually wanted to highlight this because we went to a wedding over the weekend and talked with a wind farm developer. And wind farms, I know, have been in the news for a while now. They are a popular way that many farmers in particular, but landowners in general, are making money from their land without really needing to do much or give up much. If you ever drive through Iowa, you'll see that they're just building wind farms like crazy there. I know that there's sometimes a little bit of controversy around this, but I wanted to cover how people are making money from wind farms because it can actually be a really good deal for a landowner. So if anyone has any questions, I'll cover them while I go over the prepared questions. So let's look at wind farms. Now, the first question that I had when I was thinking about wind farms as a landowner is just, oh, can we see a visual of Iowa? Mm-hmm. As always, Avi has good questions. Now let's look at an Iowa wind farm map. Yep. See, there are a lot of wind projects going on. Let's look at an actual image. So here, images throughout Iowa. Yeah, take a drive through Iowa. If you haven't done a road trip in a while, you should take a drive through. You'll see they are everywhere. Iowa, I believe, has the most wind farms per capita of any state. So that's not the fun fact for the day. That's just an additional fun fact, I guess. But yes, so the first big question that I had is, how much land do you actually need in order to lease your property for wind farms? And I should preface all this by saying, when we're talking about making money as a landowner from wind farms, we're not talking about having you go out and actually develop the wind farms. What's special about Iowa? That's a good question. They have, well, one, they have a lot of farmland, and farmland does tend to be targeted for wind farms because it's open. And farmers actually, a lot of farmers, not all farmers, but a lot of farmers like the wind farm lease setup because it does actually leave a lot of their land open for farming. Again, I mean, there is some controversy here. Said that strangely. But a lot of farmers do like it. They find it doesn't require that they give up too much of their land. And it's just a good source of income. Many farmers have been struggling in recent years, so this is a good supplement. But maybe I can come up with a more concrete reason why Iowa in particular. I think they also have some local legislation that makes wind farms particularly lucrative. And they have nice, strong wind. It is the prairie, so they have great access to kind of year-round good wind conditions. And there are a number of supportive state policies that make it relatively easy to develop wind farms there, along with lots of relatively open, large tracts of land. So it's kind of a combination of factors. Are you picking up my Indian accent? LOL. Yeah, you're rubbing off on me. And yeah, that's another question. Can you install wind turbines on a residential property? You can. People use wind for off-grid energy. That's a separate topic than what I was going to talk about today. Maybe we can do that tomorrow. But yeah, you can also do very small-scale wind just to supply like off-grid energy for yourself as well. Okay, so, but when we're talking specifically about making money from wind, usually what we're looking at is a landowner who leases their land to a wind developer, and they get lease payments for the period of the lease agreement, like 30 years or so. And that developer is ultimately going to be working with usually like a large-scale utility company or utility provider. So these are larger-scale projects, which means that they do need a fair amount of land. Now, that doesn't mean that your land has to be this large, but say, so for example, when we were talking with the wind developer this weekend, they were looking for a minimum of about 20,000 acres. But that doesn't mean you need at least 20,000 acres in order to make money leasing your land to wind developers. You just need to be one of a number of landowners that are within the catchment area for the overall project. So, you know, a developer is going to prefer a larger tract of land, but again, if you have 40 to 100 acres and you are within a larger area that the developer is looking at for a wind farm, you could potentially be one of many landowners that are involved in the project. So the size you need is going to vary based on the projects that are going on. Yeah, I mean, if it's like 1 or 2 acres, you're probably not going to find many people willing to lease your land for wind farms, but you could have 40 to 100 acres and participate in a larger project. For a standalone project, though, the project as a whole would need a minimum of maybe, say, 20,000 acres. The bigger issue, though, is not size, but proximity to transmission lines. So a while back, I did some videos on Landgate. This video isn't really promoting them, but I'm just showing in Landgate because Landgate is actually a website that's tailored toward wind and solar energy. So if you look, you can just search for your property for free on Landgate, and you can look up how close you are to transmission lines. Right, so that I can get into that in a second. But yeah, values also based on how close you are to the infrastructure. So here you can see transmission lines are in red, and you can look up how close you are to existing transmission lines, because the biggest factor aside from wind availability when you're looking at wind development is proximity to existing electrical infrastructure. Developers rarely want to extend transmission lines for miles and miles and miles. And the second factor that Avi is bringing up is you also want to be close to a substation. That's another limiting factor. And I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds here, but it's not just proximity to transmission lines and substations, it's proximity to infrastructure that has additional capacity, right? So sometimes you can have transmission lines nearby, but they're fully booked, like they're already carrying as much energy as they're capable of carrying. And so they won't be that useful for the developer. Again, this is getting a little bit in the weeds, but, one just high-level thing you can look at if you're thinking about potentially making money from your land through a wind lease is just quickly searching whether there's electrical infrastructure near the property. And you can do that on a site like Landgate. I think there are a few others out there as well. And then what would happen is the developer will usually reach out to you, not the other way around. But I believe you're actually still able to post your property on a site like Landgate as, you're a landowner interested in leasing your land. But the way it usually works is the developer will reach out to you and ask you if you would like to lease your land for a wind farm. Is there a way to check the capacity of the local grid? I don't think you can do that on Landgate, but you could call the local power company or the company that owns the transmission lines and see whether there is additional capacity and how much. I think that's how I would do it. So the developer would reach out to you and essentially give you a lease. And the nice thing about it is, as the landowner, you actually don't do that much. You have to review the lease, and there'll be some points you'll want to negotiate, of course, but you don't have to do any of the development. The developer will do that. They'll pay for all of that. You just get paid for having your land available. Again, that's one reason why it has been attractive to a number of farmers, not everyone, but to many farmers. And the amount that you can make, which is the big question, does vary. I mean, it depends on where you're located, how much wind is in the area, what sorts of local incentives there are to help offset the costs, whether the developer is also going to need to do a bunch of infrastructure upgrades, all of that. But a kind of rough estimate is somewhere between $3,000 and $10,000 per turbine per year. Again, that depends on region, wind speed, project scale, infrastructure availability, all of that. So farmers are reporting that range. You might expect, though, to be maybe in the lower end of that, $3,000 to $5,000 per turbine. So, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture found between $8,000 and $33,000 per year per turbine. So they're actually putting it at slightly higher numbers. I think the point here is that it's not going to make you rich, but it can be a decent chunk of extra income to help offset the cost of owning land, increased housing costs, things like that. Now, Abby's asking, are there any cons of leasing your land for wind energy? So, yes, there always are some trade-offs. The wind turbines themselves don't take up as much land as, say, like solar development, but you are still going to have to give up use to some portion of your land. The developer and then ultimately the final owner, usually the utility company, will have easements and rights to access the property and maintain their equipment. And you will have the turbines on your land. Some people don't like that. It does have a very big visual impact, as you can imagine. I know that there's been a lot of controversy out there about noise generated from the wind turbines. Now, I don't necessarily want to start like a big argument, but according to my research, that's not actually that big of a concern. especially with newer turbines. But some people are concerned about that, the noise generated from the wind turbines. But the primary issue would be, you are going to be giving the ultimate owner some rights to come on your land and maintain and use their equipment. You are going to be giving up some space, and you will have the turbines on the land, so that visual impact. One other thing that I think some landowners worry about is what happens if the developer or the final owner go out of business or go bankrupt. Like, am I stuck with these turbines on my land? And the answer to that is you can ask the developer or the owner to put up a decommissioning bond or insurance to cover turbine removal, either when the lease is up or if they, go bankrupt, go out of business. And again, so this gets into what happens when the lease expires. That's one thing that you should make sure, you should have the lease reviewed with an attorney if you decide to lease your land for wind farming. But one thing you should make sure that's in there is some kind of decommissioning clause where the company, the final owner, is responsible for removing the wind turbines and restoring the land to its original condition. The nice thing is wind turbines aren't going to cause much contamination, but there should be that clause in there in case something happens. And no, you don't keep the turbines because you don't own the turbines. But you should make sure that the owner is responsible for cleaning them up. I mean, I suppose you could try and negotiate that, but no, you do not you're not the owner of the turbines. I think that's an important point. You are just leasing, the owner is leasing your land, right? So they have the right to be on there and put the turbines on there, but you are not the owner of the turbines. So that's an important thing to understand. That should also mean that you are not responsible for maintenance of them. So that should be clear in the lease as well. And there are some other things that you would want to negotiate in the lease, like what rights to the land the wind turbines are on do you still have? Because the turbines don't take up that large of a footprint. So, if you want to keep farming in the area around them, you want to make sure that all of that is clear in the lease, what you're able to do with the property right around the turbines. So, I do want to show one case study of how this kind of plays out in practice. So this is an example, again, from Iowa. A farmer who had, I'll get to the fun fact after the case study. So this is a case study of a farmer who was in debt. It was actually a widow, so a 75-year-old widow who lost her husband, I believe, and her farm had gone into debt. And this is unfortunately not an uncommon example. I think many small farmers have been struggling in recent years. And so she was able to lease her property for a wind farm. And they installed, this was only 160 acres that she leased. So here's, again, an example of how having a relatively smaller parcel of land can still work for a wind lease. And on her 160 acres, the developer was able to put 3 wind turbines. And for those 3 wind turbines, here's some footage, she gets about $35,000 per year. And that's going to grow with inflation. So that's another important point about negotiating leases. is you'll want to make sure that there's something in there to cover increased costs, right? Like you'll want your lease rate to go up with inflation over time. You don't want it to be a flat fee for 30 years. So right now she's making $35,000 per year, and it's going to grow with inflation. And each turbine, you can see those 3 turbines here, each turbine physically occupies less than 1 acre. So the vast majority of her land is still available for farming. She's still able to continue the majority of her farm operations and use the majority of her land still. So that $35,000 is almost pure additional profit to her. And with that income, she has been able to, at the time of this article, she was able to bring her debt down to $67K. That was from $350K. So she gave up 1 or 2 acres of her land in order to get a substantial chunk of additional income and pay off her debt. So this is an example of a farmer who did really find that the ability to lease her land for wind development was very beneficial. In there, you get to see the images of wind farms in Iowa. I bet her neighbors dislike her. Hopefully her contract has an escrow account to dismantle and remove. Hi, Zaphael. Yeah, so that I actually was saying that earlier. It is important to make sure if you're going to do this that you include in the lease that at the end of the contract, or if the company goes out of business, they will decommission and dismantle the wind turbines so you're not stuck with them. You wouldn't believe how much concrete is sunk into the ground and how expensive those are to remove. Yeah. So it would be expensive to have to remove it on your own. And that is an important thing to add in the contract. So that's one example there. And this is no longer showing wind farms. But I will now cover, Abby, the fact of the day, which is wind turbines only take up about 1% to 2% of the land they sit on. So again, that means in theory, you can still farm, graze cattle, or use most of the land almost like normal, even when it's leased out for wind. But of course, you want to make sure that that's very clear in the lease, that how you're going to be using the land and that you have the right to use it for farming or grazing or whatever you want to do through the term of the lease. So, as always, if you're going to do something like this and enter into a lease, make sure that an attorney reviews it and that all your rights are protected. So that is just a brief overview of leasing your land to make money through a wind farm. But Abby, you did bring up the question, can you just put up one wind turbine and use it for your own energy? And I could cover that tomorrow. Off-grid wind as a way to be off-grid and homestead. So that might be interesting. But in the meantime, how many wind turbines do you need to power a house? Well, I can look that up for tomorrow. I am going to guess that you could maybe get away with 1, although I think we'll cover it tomorrow, but I don't think you could use wind as your sole energy source for a variety of reasons. You beat me to that question. Well, let's see. We'll find out tomorrow. Can you go completely off-grid with just wind? We will find out. So in the meantime, for everyone who's here, we do have a free gift, 17 simple ways to generate income from land. That link will be in the description and the pinned comment. And if you are interested in purchasing land, our website is land.goatcap.com. And because I covered our Pasco County property today, I will give our Florida discount as another free gift. And that is Live FL 150 for $150 off any of our Florida properties. and you can find all of them again at land.gocap.com. That code will be valid until midnight, but if you hold the property, it'll be applied to your purchase even if you don't purchase the property today. And Zafael is saying you probably want a number of renewable power sources for off-grid wind, solar fuel. And I'm going to guess you are right, Zafael. But I'll look into that tomorrow and see if it is even possible to be 100% off-grid on wind. Battery reserve, yeah. So, yeah, in the meantime, if you're looking for land to go off-grid or lease as a wind farm, you can look at some of our properties at land.gocap.com. And again, I mentioned Landgate. You can use that website to see where nearby transmission lines and substations are, which would be useful if you're thinking about leasing your land for either wind or solar. And then tomorrow, we'll look into off-grid wind. And did I cover the new? I didn't. I was about to and got sidetracked, so thank you. I was saying that the discount code does apply also if you hold a Florida property today. And I wanted to note that we have a new addition to our hold policy. We discussed it this morning, and so I'll unveil it today. But if you hold a property and then decide you actually want a different property, you can apply your hold fee to the different property as long as you buy it within 30 days of paying the hold fee. So this is a new benefit we're adding, which allows you to really find the property that's going to work for you. So that means you can hold a property, do your research, and have some security that your hold won't be lost, that if the property you find out doesn't quite work for you, you can apply that hold fee to a different property as long as, again, you buy within 30 days. So we're excited about that as well. We've been thinking about a lot of new policies that hopefully will help people really find the property that works for them. And like I said earlier, Zafael, I don't know if you heard, but we are going to be bringing back the free land giveaway soon. So be on the lookout for that. We're excited about that. We're putting together the final tweaks to that today and tomorrow. We'll release it soon. So if not tomorrow, then in the upcoming days. But thank you, everyone, for being here. Again, our website is land.gocap.com. I'll be here again tomorrow at 2 p.m. And can you keep moving your old hold fee to different properties forever? No, you do have to make the purchase within 30 days. So you could look at a number of different properties, but as long as you make the final purchase within 30 days of paying the hold fee, you can apply it. Yeah, so that's what I was just saying. You have 30 days to apply the hold fee to whichever property you end up wanting to purchase, right? So it doesn't last forever, but you have the ability to look at multiple different properties and find the one that works for you. Just buy within 30 days. But hopefully that's helpful. You can go to land.gocap.com and hold properties or buy properties there. And tomorrow we will talk about off-grid wind. So thank you, everyone, for joining. I'll see you